Welcome everyone to the next episode of Wrestling Tonight. I'm Victor, this is Dylan, this is Brandon, and we'll just jump right into it. This week's Raw opened with The Rock at home talking about John Cena. Do you guys remember what happened with John Cena?
The Rock was like, he was on the phone and then he's like, John Cena, you shouldn't have come here. But then John Cena's like this little kid, and then later on he asks him a question, and then he goes, "It don't matter what you think." And then the little boy starts crying, and then The Rock says, "I forgive you," and gives him free pebbles, and then he goes sees them. The end.
Yeah, and then he talks a little bit about The Miz, says that before WrestleMania he'll be on Raw, so it'll be interesting to see him on Raw just before WrestleMania. After that, we see Cole in his box, which they call a coal mine, which is, I don't get that, but whatever. What do you guys think of the coal mine?
I think it's messed up. But I think he's scared about Jerry King Lawler, because Jerry wants Michael wants to do a match and he did it. And Michael thinks he can beat Jerry King Lawler, but he can't.
And then we see the Miz. He talks a little bit about The Rock. Talks about him being the champion and The Rock's family. You know, the former wrestlers. None of them were ever able to be champions, so he's better than they are. This is just again building up the whole Rock Miz feud. And then from there we have an email. And do you guys remember what the email says? Well, basically it talks about that there's two first-time matches for her, both John Cena and Miz, and basically John Cena is gonna face Alberto Del Rio, and the Miz is gonna face the Great Khali. And the very next match, the very first match of the night, is the Miz versus Great Khali. What did you guys think of that?
I think it was bogus. The Great Khali is bigger than the Miz, but the Miz won. But the Great Khali is the best, but his back is bleeding, so he got out.
Yeah, and the Miz actually got help from Alex Riley, and then, like Dylan was saying, he hit Great Khali with a chair and actually cut him, so he was bleeding it from his back. So that was kind of interesting. After that, we hear that Michael Cole's going to expose Jerry Lawler with a special guest later on. Then we see John Morrison backstage talking to Snooki, who was a guest host this week on Raw from the Jersey Shore. Then Vicky and Dolph come up to them, and Vicky starts talking trash with Snooki, and she tries to smack Snooki, and Snooki does what?
She grabs her hand and smacks her back.
Yep, and she smacked her pretty hard. Then after that, we see Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan. Now, I don't like Sheamus. I never have liked him.
And Sheamus said if he loses, he'll quit, but if he wins, he gets Daniel Bryan's belt in the United States Championship.
Yep, and Daniel Bryan for me is actually really, I think he's got talent, and ever since he fought The Miz a few weeks ago, you can see that he's pretty good. And this was actually a pretty good match. Do you guys remember how it ended?
Yeah. Daniel Bryan jumped from the top, and Sheamus kicked him right in the face, and then he fell, pinned out, and it was kind of bogus. Because Sheamus, he only got one belt once, and now he has two. That's bogus. Because Sheamus he needs a tan. He's like all white, like this. And he goes like this in the game, Canadian, right? Whenever you get his call, he goes like, Canadian, right? Okay.
Yeah, Sheamus is a little light in the skin. He could use some tanning lessons from Snooki, but it was actually a really good match. And that last move was amazing. Daniel Bryan jumped off the top rope, and Sheamus kicked him in the face, and it was actually unbelievable because it was midair. So it was a good match. I was surprised. Then after that, we see kind of what happened last time with Michael Cole and JBL. And Michael Cole brings out his special guest, who turns out to be this week it turns out to be Brian Christopher, who is
Lawler's son.
Yep, and he used to be part of Too Cool back in the day. I remember watching them. I thought they were corny, but anyway, so he was here to talk bad about Jerry Lawler. Do you remember some of the stuff he said?
No. The reason he didn't use Lawler as his last name because that's a sign of loserness. Wait,
Yep.
what was Brad's name? Brad the Master.
What Brad?
Brad the. He had another name, Brad.
Oh, you mean Brian? Oh, he
Yeah,
was
Brian
was it he Grandmaster Sexy or something like that?
Grandmaster Sexy. Yeah, or Sexy.
Yeah. So then, basically, he went there to talk bad about his dad. What wound up happening was he went up to Jerry. Jerry took it, sat down, and Brian Christopher talked. Actually, he smacked him in the head, and then out of nowhere, what happened? Do you remember?
No.
Jack Swagger comes out and jumps on Jerry Lawler.
And then
And then JR came. Well, before that.
JR came out.
Before that, yeah, Jim Ross came out.
And they were about to do a match where Jim Ross versus Michael Cole, but before that, Jack Swagger just stopped it and he just did the
ankle lock.
Yeah, and then he did it on Jerry the King Lawler, and then Michael Cole did it on JR, but he doesn't even know how to do that. And he never knew it.
Yeah, and so basically both Lawler and Jim Ross got the ankle lock from both Swagger and Michael Cole. Michael Cole keeps trying to pretend he's a wrestler.
But he's not. He never won a match. He never did a match.
Yeah, and all he does is he says, "Come on, Swagger! Come on, Swagger! Come on, Swagger!" That's all he does. So Swagger's his puppy dog now, who does everything he says. Next match is Randy Orton versus Mason Ryan. You know, the last member of the Nexus.
No, there was two.
Well, no, that's the last one before he has to face CM Punk at WrestleMania. This one, Randy Orton wins by RKO.
Yeah, but Mason Ryan was gonna end it, but Randy does the RKO on him,
And then what happens?
pins him, and then he kicks him in the skull, and then he was about to do the RKO on CM Punk, but CM Punk refuses, so he gets out of the ring, and Randy just wins.
Yep, and then we hear that Drew Carey's going to be the next inductee into the Hall of Fame. After that, it's Vicky Guerrero versus Trish Stratus. Do you remember that match, Brad?
Yeah, in the beginning, when all the girls were in, Vicky says, like, wait, and then she starts doing jumping jacks, and then she goes like,
Oh yeah, she tries to warm up.
And then she grabs her, and then Trish tries to grab her and pin her, but that didn't work. And then
her shoe and her socks come off. Remember that one?
No, that was her shoe. And then Vicky's like, I'm God. Where's her shoe? And then she lost the other one, and then she's like, 1 minute.
Yeah, and then Trish Stratus comes with, Trish Stratus spanks her with the shoe, and Dolph Ziggler comes out, and then he comes out.
And then John Morrison's like, Dolph Ziggler out, and then he runs to the rope, spins, and gets Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah, and then my favorite diva comes out, Layla, Lay Cool and Michelle McCool, and Michelle gives the boot to the face of who? Remember Trish Stratus?
And then Vicky won that match for that.
Yeah, and then they started taking pictures to post them online of Trish Stratus.
And that was kind of gross.
Trish Stratus laying down with Layla and Vicky on top and pinning her. Then Michelle McCool starts talking trash to Snooki and gets in her face and pushes her. And then you guys remember what happened?
Yeah, Snooki just grabbed Michelle McCool's leg, pulled her, hit her mouth, and then took over Layla, and then Trish Stratus.
Do you remember what happened after that?
Yeah. So Trish Stratus and Snooki are both battling them, and then Vicky's like, she's just standing there, and then they decide to go get her, but then she doesn't, and then everybody gets out except for Snooki and them.
And Trish Stratus
And John Morrison.
And then Vicky challenges them to a match at WrestleMania.
But Vicky's not in it, but she knows she sucks.
And then Snooki agrees to it, so that's going to be an interesting match.
Then they start dancing around.
It's Snooki, Trish Stratus, and John Morrison versus
Dolph Ziggler. And they're cool.
They're cool. And then we see some more video of Sin Cara, which is, keeps building him up. He's going to be really interesting. He looks like
he's like a ninja. He spins when he jumps, and he jumps with his back like this.
Yep. And then after that, it's Alberto Del Rio versus John Cena. The match basically ends with Cena getting Del Rio on the attitude adjustment before Brodus Clay comes and punches Cena, and he wins by disqualifications because Brodus Clay interfered. After that, do you remember what happened?
Yeah, The Rock's music plays, and then it comes out, and I'm like...
Yeah, I was excited, right?
Yeah, and then I'm like, hey, what the heck? That guy, he's not The Rock. And then he takes off his glasses. You could easily tell it was amazed because of his eyes.
Yeah, but I thought because of the music, I thought it was The Rock. I was all excited.
I was looking weird, but I saw cuts on the back of his head, and I'm like, that's probably a mask. But masks have like wrinkles right there. Well, he wasn't wearing a mask. He was just covering his hair with some balls.
Oh yeah, so it's like a hair mask. Do you remember what happened after that, brother?
Yeah, then The Rock, aka Miz, gets in there, and then Johnson hits him, and it just goes into a whole battle between those three versus Johnson. The Miz did the people's eyebrow, and then he gets up, do this, and then he grabs Johnson's front of his body and slams it right into the part of the ring.
Yeah, he does the skull crushing finale right in front of the spinning WWE logo on top of the entrance, and that's how Raw ended. It was a pretty good episode, and it's they're kind of getting better and better the closer we get to WrestleMania. So we're interested to see what happens this next week on Raw.